In the intellectual ferment of the mid-20th century, few works erupted with the force and Delphic ambiguity of Marshall McLuhan's 1965 treatise, Understanding Media: The Extensions of Man. Appearing amidst a burgeoning technological landscape, the book constituted a seismic event in communication theory, a field until then largely preoccupied with the persuasive content and quantifiable effects of messages. McLuhan, a literary scholar by training, proposed a radical reorientation. He insisted that the true import of any communication technology lay in the structural transformation it wrought upon human perception and social organization. The book, with its mosaic of aphorisms, historical leaps, and startling juxtapositions, offered a bewildering and exhilarating new grammar for comprehending a world being fundamentally rewired. Its central pronouncements, now absorbed into the popular lexicon, continue to provoke and illuminate, establishing a paradigm that posits media as active environmental forces. To apprehend the enduring significance of understanding media is to trace its intellectual origins, dissect its core tenets, evaluate its controversial reception, and map its profound, often unacknowledged, influence on our understanding of the contemporary digital sensorium. The work's legacy resides in its foundational capacity to shift inquiry from what we communicate to the ways in which our modes of communication reconfigure human experience itself. The intellectual ground for understanding media was prepared by a confluence of influences, foremost among them the work of McLuhan's colleague at the University of Toronto, the economic historian Harold Innis. Innis, in works like The Bias of Communication and Empire and Communications, had already developed a powerful thesis connecting the dominant media of a civilization to its political and social structure. He distinguished between time-based media, such as stone tablets or oral traditions, which foster community, tradition, and religious authority, and space-based media, like papyrus and paper, which facilitate administration over vast distances, centralization, and secular empire. In this framework was monumental, yet it remained a largely macroscopic analysis of political economy. McLuhan absorbed this grand historical scheme and psychologized it. His central inquiry became the effect of these media biases upon the human sensorium, the very ratio of the senses that constitutes consciousness. He transposed in this historical materialism into a theory of sensory and psychological change, arguing that the shift from the dominated world of oral culture to the dominated world of print culture was an event of unparalleled psychic consequence. This focus was further refined by McLuhan's deep immersion in literary modernism. The fragmented, multiperspectival techniques of James Joyce and T.S. Eliot provided him with a model for his own prose style and a conceptual key for understanding the simultaneous allotance nature of electronic awareness. His method, therefore, became one of aesthetic perception, a mode of pattern recognition that treated the entire technological environment as a vast, evolving poem demanding close read. The central pillar of McLuhan's theoretical edifice is the deceptively simple aphorism: the medium is the message. This declaration moves the locus of meaning away from the overt content of a broadcast, a film, or a text. The genuine message of any medium or technology is the change of scale or pace or pattern that it introduces into human affairs. The content of a medium is a juicy piece of meat carried by the burglar to distract the watchdog of the mind. The railway, for instance, introduced radical new concepts of time, space, and power, accelerating the pace of life and creating new urban centers entirely independent of the freight it carried. Its message was the structural transformation. For an even purer example, McLuhan famously pointed to the electric light, a medium with literally no content. The light bulb is pure information. It abolished the tyranny of night, extending the working day and reordering patterns of social life on a global scale. This environmental change is its message. Closely tied to this concept is the book's subtitle, The Extensions of Man. Here, McLuhan posits all technologies as prostheses, externalizations of human organs and faculties. The wheel is an extension of the foot. The book is an extension of the eye. Clothing is an extension of the skin. Crucially, electronic media, telegraph, radio, television are extensions of the central nervous system itself. This externalization has a profound feedback effect. As we extend a part of ourselves, we simultaneously amputate or numb that same faculty internally. The literate man, relying on the externalized memory of the printed page, experiences a diminishment of the prodigious memory cultivated in all cultures. The driver of a car, his legs extended by the machine, feels a sense of disembodiment from the physical act of locomotion. By externalizing our nervous system, electronic media create an environment where humanity lives in a state of perpetual, low-grade psychic shock, a condition McLuhan termed the narcosis of Narcissus, where we are mesmerized by the extended, technological reflection of ourselves. To classify the particular effects of these extensions, McLuhan introduced his most famous and perhaps most contentious heuristic, The distinction between hot and cool media. A hot medium is one that extends a single sense in high definition. High definition means being well filled with data, leaving little for the audience to complete. Print is hot. It is intensely visual, linear, and uniform, demanding little participation beyond the simple act of decoding. Radio and film are similarly hot. They provide a rich sensory experience that engulfs the listener or viewer. A cool medium, conversely, is low in definition and thus requires high participation from the audience to fill in the missing information. A telephone is a cool medium, its sound quality is poor, compelling the listener to actively strain to piece together the conversation. A cartoon, with its spare lines, is cooler than a photograph. For Mc-Luhan, the archetypal cool medium was television. He argued that the television image, a constantly scanning mosaic of light points, was a tactile, low-definition form that demanded deep sensory involvement from the viewer to construct a coherent image. This distinction provided a startlingly effective lens for analyzing cultural phenomena. The televised presidential debates of 1960 between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy became his classic case study. Radio listeners, experiencing the hot medium of pure audio, believed Nixon had won the debate based on his command of the issues. Television viewers, immersed in the cool, participatory medium, overwhelmingly favoured the relaxed, visually appealing Kennedy, whose image better suited the low-intensity, involving nature of the TV screen. Nixon, with his 5 o'clock shadow and intense, high-definition debating style, was ill-suited for television's cool embrace. The medium, its formal properties, shaped the political outcome more decisively than any policy statement. From the extension of the central nervous system, Mc-Luhan derived his most enduring prophecy, the advent of the global village. He saw that electronic media were annihilating the temporal and spatial distances that had structured human society for millennia. The telegraph and later the satellite created a condition of instantaneous, global interconnectedness. Information from across the planet arrived as quickly as gossip from next door. This implosion of the world into a single, intimate community was, for Mc-Luhan, a form of retribalization. The linear, detached, and individualistic consciousness fostered by print culture was giving way to a new, acoustic sensibility and haletance, deeply involving mode of awareness characteristic of proliferate tribal societies. Yet Mc-Luhan's vision of this village was devoid of romantic idealism. It was a place of profound friction and anxiety. In a village, everyone is in everyone else's business. There is no privacy, no detachment. The global village is a space of heightened emotional contagion, where conflicts and crises are experienced collectively and instantaneously. This prescient diagnosis provides an eerie accurate blueprint for the social dynamics of the internet and social media. The constant stream of information, the viral spread of outrage, the collapse of public and private spheres, and the formation of new digital tribes bound by shared effect are all phenomena anticipated in his description of an electronically interconnected humanity. He foresaw what were the primary form of engagement when an ongoing, often painful, process of mutual discovery and irritation on a planetary The reception of understanding media was as paradoxical as its contents. Within a few years of its publication, Mc-Luhan was transformed from an obscure English professor into a global intellectual celebrity, a veritable oracle of the electronic age. He appeared on magazine covers, was the subject of television specials, and became a sought-after consultant for corporate giants like IBM and Bell Telephone. His aphorisms permeated advertising copy and artistic manifestos, with figures like Andy Warhol finding in his theories of validation for their own explorations of media saturation. This popular apotheosis, however, was mirrored by deep skepticism within the academy. The most persistent critique levelled against him was that of technological determinism. Critics argued that he endowed technology with a monolithic, autonomous power, rendering human agency, economic structures, and political choices irrelevant. His framework, they contended, suggested an inevitable technological trajectory that humans were powerless to alter. While his emphatic phrasing certainly invited this interpretation, a more charitable reading suggests a softer form of determinism, one more akin to environmental influence. For Mc-Luhan, technology creates the ground conditions, the sensory environment, within which human action then unfolds. A further, and related, critique focused on his methodology. Social scientists, accustomed to empirical data and falsifiable hypotheses, were exasperated by his mosaic or probe approach. He eschewed linear argumentation, preferring to arrange disparate facts and historical anecdotes into a resonating field of associations, leaving the reader to perceive the underlying pattern. His work offered insights, illuminations, and provocations, something quite different from testable scientific claims. This made his ideas difficult to operationalize and easy to dismiss as unscholarly speculation. Despite these potent critiques, The intellectual legacy of understanding media is immense and pervasive. Mc-Luhan's work established the very terrain that media studies would explore for the next half-century. Thinkers who followed, even those who defined themselves in opposition to him, operated within the paradigm he had created. Neil Postman's seminal 1985 book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, is a direct and explicit application of Mc-Luhan's method. Postman analyzes how the medium of television, with its bias towards entertainment and visual stimulation, has fundamentally trivialized public discourse, transforming politics, religion, and news into branches of show business. His argument is pure Mc-Luhan: the form of the medium has overwhelmed its content. The French post-structuralist Jean Baudrillard took Mc-Luhan's ideas a step further into the realm of the hyperreal, where Mc-Luhan saw media extending reality. Baudrillard, in works like Simulacra and Simulation, argued that in a fully media-saturated society, the simulation precedes and generates the real. The map comes to precede the territory. This concept of a world composed of self-referential signs, untethered from any underlying reality, is a radical extension of Mc-Luhan's core insight about media as environments. More recently, the architects of the digital revolution, particularly the founders of Wired magazine in the 1990s, explicitly canonized Mc-Luhan as their patron saint. His concepts of the global village and the electronic extension of consciousness provided the essential vocabulary for making sense of the nascent internet. Today, academic fields like platform studies, software studies, and media ecology are all direct descendants of his foundational inquiry into the formal properties of technology. They may employ more rigorous methodologies, yet their central question: how do the architectures of our media shape our thought, our culture, and our society, is the very question Mc-Luhan placed at the center of intellectual life. In the final analysis, Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media stands as a work of profound and enduring resonance. Its value lies in its function as a toolkit for perception, a way of seeing the world anew by rendering the invisible technological environment visible. Mc-Luhan was a poet of technology, a diagnostician of cultural change whose aphoristic style was designed to shock the intellect into a new state of awareness. The charges of determinism and a lack of scholarly rigor, while possessing a degree of validity, often miss the essential purpose of his project. He was creating a new art of civilizational survival, a training manual for navigating the turbulent psychic waters of the electronic age. He sought to equip his readers with the perceptual agility needed to comprehend and potentially mitigate the powerful, often subliminal, effects of our own inventions. Nearly 60 years after its publication, in an era defined by ubiquitous computing, algorithmic culture, and virtual realities, his central message has acquired an even greater urgency. We inhabit a global village far more intense and totalizing than he could have fully imagined. Comprehending this complex and disorienting new sensorium requires precisely the kind of holistic, pattern-based thinking that Understanding Media championed. His work remains an indispensable guide, a set of powerful probes for exploring the technological extensions of humanity that continue to reshape us in their own image.